All right, so this next installment here, we're going to discuss the practical assessment section of the Dive Master program in a little bit more detail. So Eric walked you through a little bit of the administrative considerations for this segment here in the classroom a little bit ago. We're going to just discuss a little bit more detail about each of these four assessment sections for just some tips for you and how to organize and run these as part of your Dive Master curriculum. So just a high level point here is that the first three practical assessments are centered around working on with divers, right, on courses. And so it's ideal to have candidates work with actual student divers if that's feasible during practical assessments 1 through 3. Because ultimately that's going to provide them with the most realistic training. Now, a way you can look to structure this is to run a role play scenario of each of these segments first and then have them work with student divers on a real course after they have done that. If you have the time to do that, that'll offer very comprehensive training, right? And a lot of exposure to different ways of working with candidates, right? Now, keep in mind that the candidates do need to meet performance requirements as they are detailed in the instructor manual. So each of these practical assessments do have bulleted points that each candidate needs to meet, right? Things like organizational components, coordinating flow, and then specifically here, helping a student diver overcome a learning difficulty. So if you're running one of these assessments, let's say practical application number 1, and no problems occur, then candidates are going to need to repeat the practical assessments until all performance requirements have been met, right? And this may mean attending additional confined water or open water dives, or with a class assisting, student divers, right? So things to keep in mind for you from a logistical standpoint. And of course, as a reminder, your dive master candidates cannot be used to increase student diver to instructor ratios as dive master candidates, right? Alrighty. Now, if having candidates work with actual student divers may not be feasible, obviously role playing is completely acceptable and very much encouraged. That's a nice foundational tool to help develop their lines of thinking in a much more controlled environment, obviously. So it can be highly effective, right, where you're assigning different roles and problems for them to address as dive master candidates. So just some quick points on each of these practical assessments. For the first, this is open water diver students in confined water that your dive master candidates will work with or role play working with, right? So here you want them to organize pre-dive equipment set up by student divers. You want them to help coordinate student diver flow during the training. Of course, supervising student divers not receiving immediate attention of the instructor who's running the session. And then, of course, as we had mentioned, having your dive master candidates help a student diver overcome a learning difficulty. Now, if you're role playing this is a good opportunity for you to build in different types of problems with skills or with buoyancy, things of that nature, or maybe even simulating people who may be a little bit nervous, right? And how dive masters can deal with those different scenarios, right? And then you also want them to respond to or prevent student diver problems as they occur. Obviously, this is something they will do gently and kind of on the fly. And then the last one for this one is demonstrating a skill for student divers as well, right? Which this is detailed quite nicely in the guide to teaching. So again, having the materials available to you and just referencing between your instructor manual and guide to teaching are going to be excellent preparatory tools for you in organizing these sessions. The second assessment is the open water diver students in open water. So here there are 7 things that your dive master candidates need to complete. Assessing open water training site is part of this, right? Again, building off of some of the previous exercises in the dive master curriculum. Organizing pre-dive equipment setup by student divers here as well. And then, of course, assisting in the preparation and management of the site and coordinating student diver flow during training. Supervising student divers who are not receiving the immediate attention of the instructor during training or skill practice. And then, of course, responding to or preventing student diver problems as they occur, like we had done in the practical assessment 1 there as well. And then leading student divers on an underwater tour, right? So remember, the ratio is adapted here at 2 to 1 after the skills portion of this dive, and they would lead those divers. And again, you can role play that as well. The third practical assessment here is the continuing education student divers in open water. So here there are just 4 things that they need to complete, detailed in the instructor manual. Obviously the coordination element of it there, but second to that is escorting Con Ed divers during a training dives that would allow indirect instructor supervision, and then report performance and learning difficulties to the instructor after having done that. Right? So again, this is an important thing that you set up for them to be successful with, so that they understand their role and what they can and cannot do, and then what they should report back to you afterwards. Right? Helping a continuing education student diver overcome a learning difficulty. Again, this is a repeat through all these practical assessments, and obviously responding to or preventing student diver problems as they might or might not occur. Right? So we do want to structure those in there as well. And then finally, the 4th assessment here is certified divers in the open water. So again, there's 4 things they need to complete here, from the environmental assessment, supervisory steps, based on their assessment, giving a pre-dive briefing appropriate to the dive site for these divers, and then obviously accounting for the buddy teams, using their rosters when they're entering and exiting the water, and responding to or preventing diver problems as appropriate on that guided dive. Right? So 4 practical assessments in there. Again, making sure that you review the guide to teaching and organizing your slates and the slates that your dive master candidates will bring with them will make these run a lot more smoothly. Again, if you do have the opportunity to role play these first and then have them move into supervising on real courses, that'll provide a nice transition of experience into the real world application here as dive master candidates.